Hello, my final check-in for Frnkssstn by Jeanette Winterson. This is 19 to 23. This is takes us all the way to the end, so spoilers, spoilers, spoilers for the end of this short, well-judged short novel. The thing I will definitely say about this novel is, just as it was starting to get a little bit on the insufferable side, it stopped. It's like, kudos to Jeanette Winterson. She knows sort of when to pull the plug and walk away from the patient and see if it reincarnates again and again. If it has legs, if it will live, we'll see. It is attached to Frnkssstn, so I guess there's that. So yes, in these chapters we bit bop boop. We get Bedlam, where the man who called himself Victor Frnkssstn has disappeared. Attendant comes to the doctor and says he's gone, and it's like, and they go to the thing. And it's like, well, I locked him in. Well, why did you open the door? Because there was this blinding bright light coming under it, and I thought maybe he had set himself on fire. And they open the door, and it's all completely super neat, like he was never there. And they kind of go through things, and it's like, well, obviously he's just kind of he's just, this is something that deluded people do sometimes. They've engineered this, like maybe you just never locked him in there in the first place. It's like, well, you saw him in the yard yourself, doctor. So he sets down to write to Mary Shelley. Regards to the fellow who called himself Victor Frnkssstn, is vanished. The man who never existed vanished. So we get that little kind of end of the Bedlam section. We bop to the folks in the bunker in the modern day, where Victor has gone off to do something and maybe is never coming back. And indeed, spoilers for this, never does. Now, I thought he was maybe going to be uploading his friend, but maybe he's uploading himself. Who knows? But all the lights go out, the water's filling. Actually, they first they just sit around and talk, because the modern folk people definitely sit around and talk, especially the ones who aren't Frnkssstn. And actually, Ron Lord has this very kind of touching thing about how his sex doll will actually be this super accepting, warm companion for someone, see them throughout their life, and who knows, might actually learn how to have affection back, and in the end might actually feel sadness at the parting of their human companion, and the family who will sell them on eBay at the end and not wipe them down and sell them to somebody who just wants to fuck them, but doesn't have that thing, but that big bots don't try because they don't have tear ducts or something like that. It was just like, okay, there's a satiric side to it, but there's also slightly kind of just sadly kind of sympathetic, touching side to it, of just like people in the world who don't have someone to love. And indeed, Ron, at least coming from the point of view that most people don't have healthy relationships, won't have someone to love that would just love them unconditionally, that just is outside of most people's thing, and that what he's proposing and providing would be a great boon, emotional boon to a lot of sad, lonely men, which is an interesting thought in itself. Just little thing, because he's been kind of the butt of the joke throughout all this, and he actually kind of starts growing on you at the end, which is nice, because you thought he was going to be just the character. And we get Mary Shelley. Mary Shelley, who, yeah, unlike, somebody who, unlike like widows in India who are expected to climb on the pyre and and kill themselves, it's like, no, we're stubborn, we live, we survive. And she does survive past that, past Byron, and and is living, and goes to a party and meets Ada Lovelace, Byron's unloved, unwanted daughter, who he thought was a disappointment, who has, is involved in the new computer with Babbage, um, and she explains it to her, and the whole thing of like, oh, there's actually the joke of like, that looms would be Mary Shelley's smiles, because it's like, oh, Claire all those years ago talked about how looms would be writing poetry, and that infuriated Byron, and 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 how and Ada pulls out a thing saying like, oh, they're making the same kind of joke now with Babbage and his difference engine, which is what they call the early computer idea of computer. uh, and they talk about like, how um, you know uh, so they actually have kind of a moment, which is kind of a lovely thing, of these two women, and it's like, did he, you know what was my father like? And it's like, oh, he was terrible. um and I he never loved me. It's like, well, men like that were really not like her and her husband. They're artists who did not give a fuck about anybody, I guess. In a way, they were just you know um but at the end of the party, there's a man that she notices, and it's like, oh, he's got those eyes, and it's like they had this idea of like, um Shelley. Oh, that comes a little bit later, but they see this man, and it's like, oh, and they introduce, and it's like, oh, we've met before, and it's like, oh, it's Frankenstein, it's Frankenstein, and we click, and then we're back to the group under the in the thing where there's some kind of explosion has rocked things, or something has happened, and the water starts flooding, and the door opens, so they're able to get out, and she doesn't want to get out. Rye doesn't want to go out, just wants to find Frankenstein, Frank, Frankstein, Victor, Victor, Victor Stein wants to find Victor Stein, but not going to. And Ron, Lord love him, actually picks up, gives shoulders into Rye's stomach, picks him up, and is carrying him up. But he figures like, oh, he's gonna have a heart attack if I let him carry me all the way up the stairs. So he gets off. They get up. They get out. Um, and it turns out there's been a massive power failure. It's knocked out all the internet, all the Wi-Fi, all the lights, everything for like all of Manchester. And what Victor Stein was talking about with this, the uploading stuff, is that it would take out the entire grid if they needed to to be able to actually upload a human brain. And yes, many days go by, and no one knows where Victor is, and because of it's a modern era and things are signed, and there's a company in Zurich who's got kind of control or stuff like that. It's just like he was never there. It's like he disappeared. It's like, has he uploaded into the cloud? Did he ever exist? Was he a snake oil salesman? He did exist because everyone else there saw him, so it's not like he's completely figmentary, because Polly knows him, was going to write an article on him, Ron and Claire. But where did he go? Where did he go? And we end with Mary Shelley again, and her, thinking about that, thinking about her discussion with Ada, and how, it would be possible perhaps to read Shelley back into existence through punch cards in the computer. And, it's like, oh, kind of a reincarnation. And then we switch, it's back to that scene of that thing at the end of her meeting her creation, Frnkssstn. And you're like, oh, is Frankenstein an, an echo, an echo of Percy Shelley in a way for Mary Shelley, or something like that, or a creation or a transformation. There's definitely the Ovid quote in here of how, don't die, but just continually reborn and reborn and retransformed through many things. So yeah, that is Frnkssstn, where we seem to have had Frankenstein being born out of Mary Shelley, and now echoing through the ages in various forms. And maybe the latest form has jumped the fictional human divide into the transcendent of the internet, of the mechanical, of the purely mental. I don't know. So a heady novel, and not really quite sure what to make of it. Other than just the whole thing of transformation, of pushing boundaries of death, boundaries of body, boundaries of gender, boundaries of relationships, things like that are what echo in my mind. I guess I'll have to think about it and see if I can come up with something to say as a little review. But there we go. All right, more videos later.